I come to you all today to correct a mistake, an error most profound and shocking that I still lay awake at night thinking about the injustices I've brought upon this platform. For some background, last year I did 2 videos for OC-tober where I drew all of my original characters and talked about them a little bit. However, in these videos I left out a key group of characters, the cast of my long-running webcomic Castoff. My logic at the time was, I don't need to make a video talking about these characters, I make an entire webcomic about them. If people want to learn about the characters, they can just, read that. However, since then I've realized my mistake, because despite me talking about the comic in almost every video I've made, there are still people who subscribe to me who not only don't read the comic, they somehow have no idea it even exists. That is wild to me. And looking back on it, I do feel bad for not including the Castoff characters in my OC-tober videos, because these characters aren't just casual blorbos. These little guys are my ride or die. They've persevered, they've weathered the storms of 15 long years of existence, and today I'm giving them the spotlight they deserve, and finally answering the question, what the heck is Castoff? My goal for this video is simple. I want to give you guys a little primer on the series to give you a general idea of what it's about, who the characters are, etc. I'll be talking about the characters and general story stuff, so while there will be some minor spoilers, I'll try to keep them isolated to the events of the first few chapters, so I'm not spoiling any of the big twists. Also, we're going to be watching some time-lapse footage of me working on the most recent chapter in the background, but I'll try to cut out the bits where dialogue is showing to keep spoilers to a minimum. Basically, consider this an honorary, very belated part 3 for my OC-tober challenge, wherein I finally give these babies the love they deserve. And if hearing me talk about the comic in this video sparks your interest in any way, you can, of course, read the entire comic for free on the website, with new pages releasing every Monday and Friday. Hell, you can even check out the merch if you like, because not only do we have physical copies of Volume 1 and a bunch of other cool stuff, Ariana plushies are now available on Makeship. That's right, the grumpy bounty hunter herself is joining Vector in the Castoff marketable plushie lineup. She's cute, she's soft, she'll steal your children away in the night. And if you buy her plushie, you can hug this touch-starved girly as much as you want. Check the link in the description to grab an Ariana plush of your very own before the campaign ends. She won't be available afterwards, so snag one before she disappears forever. Okay, and with that out of the way, let's get into it. To start, a quick synopsis. Castoff is a fantasy adventure comic about Vector, a shy and nervous boy with glowing magic eyes that strike fear into the hearts of anyone who sees them. Because of this, he's been pretty sheltered from the outside world for his entire life, but when a chance encounter lets him meet someone seemingly immune to his fear-inducing gaze, he thinks he may have finally made a friend. Until later that night when she returns and kidnaps him. She claims he's been accused of treason and is wanted by the royal guard and drags him away from his home by force, even though poor Vector has no idea what she's talking about. Once he's brought to the capital, Vector tries to escape, and in the scuffle, his latent magical abilities awaken, and he teleports both himself and his captor to the other side of the country. Stranded far away from home, the two have to learn to work together to survive as they try to get Vector back home with the royal guard hot on their tail. On the way, they'll make new friends, new enemies, and maybe even uncover a dark conspiracy that threatens to change everything about the world as they know it. Castoff was inspired by a dream I had my freshman year of college and is actually where Vector came from. He was the main character in the dream, and he held on to that title as the story developed, though his personality and storyline changed pretty drastically. I worked on the story in the background for about 5 years, poking away at ideas in my sketchbooks and brainstorming during my various work commutes, before finally starting the comic for real in spring of 2015. And the comic just celebrated its 10th anniversary this past April. At the time of making this video, we're about 800 pages in, and a little over halfway done with the planned storyline. And on the one hand, 800 pages is a lot of work. That's literally a decade of my life and artistic development strung together in comic form. But if the size of the archive is the thing that stopped you from reading up until this point, 800 pages is about 4 volumes of manga. It's actually not that much. And yet every time I say it like that, I want to die inside because people can binge read my life's work in an afternoon. I've been working on this comic for a decade and it's probably going to take another to finish. No, it's fine. It's so fine. Anyway, that little crisis aside, let's talk about the characters. Again, I'll be avoiding any specific plot spoilers here, but I'll still need to talk about some events of the story. So if you want to go in fully blind, go read the comic and come back later. Links in the description, go enjoy yourself. Now, if you're still here, let's talk about my son. We gotta start with our main boy, so Vector's up first. We already talked about him a little, but to recap, he's a shy little guy who's been super sheltered his entire life because of his magical glowing yellow eyes. Whenever anyone makes eye contact, they're immediately struck with intense fear. He doesn't know what causes it, he can't control it, and it's led to a lot of problems as a result. His maternal figure, Miss Jacobs, isn't immune to his eyes, but it's implied she's just gotten used to his fear effect with time. She's a tad overprotective, but she has good reason to be, considering that people under the effects of Vector's eyes have attacked and tried to kill him in the past. She keeps him locked in the back room of the bookshop she runs, keeping him safe and out of sight at the cost of his freedom. She's doing her best with a bad situation, but it's still not ideal for anyone involved. Vector grew up in a bookshop and is an avid reader, with books and stories being some of the only things to keep him company during his isolation. As a result, he longs to travel and see the things he's read about in real life. But obviously, his eyes make that complicated. Not only can he not risk going outside, he doesn't even have a single friend. Until Ariana shows up, but we'll get to her in a minute. Vector is very insightful and introspective. After spending pretty much his entire life being an observer, he's usually the first one to pick up on subtle clues, and is surprisingly good at thinking under pressure. His smart guy brain might not be the best at interacting with people, but he's gotten himself and his comrades out of sticky situations with his quick thinking more than once. Given the things he's grown up dealing with, Vector has a lot of anxiety and is very nervous about doing just about anything new. He's always worried that anyone who meets his gaze will turn against him or attack him, which means that when he starts meeting people who don't have that reaction, he latches onto them immediately. He's a bit quick to trust and can be clingy out of fear of abandonment, but can you blame him, really? Vector has several goals as he moves through the story. He wants to get home, first and foremost, but he also wants to experience what the world has to offer and learn more about himself. Why his eyes glow, why people are scared of him, why he teleports seemingly at random every time he panics, and where he even came from in the first place. And, well, I won't say anything specific, but we finally got that lore drop in the most recent chapter, and oh boy, it's a lot. Anyway, here's the collection jar for Vector's therapy fund. Throw your quarters at the screen now. Or, like, I don't know, join my Patreon or something. You get early comic pages and behind-the-scenes stuff. That's cool, right? Now, of course, we wouldn't have a kidnapping plot without the kidnapper herself, so now it's time to talk about Ariana. That's my grumpy girl right there. Ariana is what she calls a freelancer. Mercenary, bounty hunter, bodyguard, whatever pays. She's a skilled mage with a short fuse, a fiery girl on a mission, and if you want to know what that mission is, good luck getting that info out of her. Ariana's a great example of one of my favorite tropes, the grumpy, bitter, worn down by life character who ends up the guardian of a small child and is forced into a parental role over it. And as much as she's not a fan, we the audience love that for her. Get emotionally attached, idiot! But to be fair, she's not an asshole without reason. Her older brother and caretaker was murdered when she was a small child, and her life basically fell apart as a result. The only family she's ever known is gone, and that was only the start of her personal tragedy. Nowadays, she's extremely closed off, doing her best to keep her head down and not get attached to other people, lest she be hurt all over again when she inevitably loses them. Kidnapping Vector was supposed to be an easy job. Find someone matching the description on the wanted poster, use them as a distraction to get inside the capital and take care of business from there. But despite how closed off she is, she's not heartless. And in a critical moment, her empathy gets the better of her. Cut to her and Vector stranded together miles and miles away from where they started after a spontaneous teleport, and you've got some prime teeth-clenched teamwork taking the spotlight. Her guilt over how she treated Vector and almost getting him killed manifests in her finally starting to open up, and the two of them forming a rocky truce before setting off to try and get Vector home. Cards on the table, Ariana is probably my favorite character to write of the main cast. She's grumpy, irritable, and pushes people away like she gets paid for it. But being able to slowly get her to open up over the course of the story and form some ironclad bonds with the rest of the party is so satisfying to write, and the intrigue about her and exactly what happened to her in the past is pretty entertaining too. Because why do people keep saying that she's supposed to be dead? Well, I'm sure that's nothing important. Anyway, moving right along. So here's the thing. If you're going on a cross-country quest, you need someone to navigate, right? And who better than this random stranger you just picked up off the side of the road? Okay, well, not literally, but close enough, right? After Vector and Ariana find themselves a long way from where they started, they have to try and get back somehow. But Ariana's not great at navigating and has never been to this part of the world before, and Vector, well, obviously he's gonna be of no help. When the two stop at an inn for the night, Ariana tries asking the innkeeper for directions, who then says, "Yeah, I'm not good with directions either, but I know a guy who's been hanging around for a while, you should ask him." Enter the Sunshine Boy himself. Frankie is a golden retriever personality shoved into a human body, a giddy and excitable person who loves making friends and traveling, and making maps of everywhere he visits. And lo, what's this? Two very lost people in need of guidance? Well, he'd be happy to help him out. Now, Ariana's not exactly giddy about letting Frankie tag along. They need a navigator, yes, but this guy, he's loud and annoying, and way too friendly. But the thing is, like Ariana, he's not scared of Vector. And once the two realize that, he suddenly becomes their best option for a tag-along travel guide. Frankie is the pure embodiment of a character who's gone through a lot of hurt in the past, but still manages to hold on to an optimistic and sunshiny view on life despite it, and we love that for him. I haven't done any official favorite character polls in a long time, but if one thing's for sure, it's that Frankie's fan base is vocal about how much they love him. And what's not to love? He's a funny little guy who says funny little things and definitely isn't hiding anything under those bandages and eye patch of his. Why on earth would you even assume such a thing? He's your new best friend, Frankie. I won't spoil what Frankie's deal is here, but I will say that his little secret gets out not long after the group starts traveling together. And the scenes that follow are still some of my favorite scenes I've written just because of the pure, raw character growth that follows it. While other characters get added to the main cast eventually, I still consider Vector, Ariana, and Frankie to be my main golden trio, and not just because they're all associated with warm colors. However, while these three do get several chapters all to themselves, we were bound to get a few more in the lineup eventually, right? After a few chapters of our main trio traveling together, getting to know each other, and only almost dying a handful of times, they find themselves washed ashore on an unfamiliar island, and in the company of two new characters. So we meet Marina and Rory at almost the exact same time in the story, but I'm going to talk about Marina first. Marina finds Vector after the group's little stunt that causes them to get to this island in the first place, and while Vector is initially terrified of interacting with a stranger without his two best friends to back him up, he quickly realizes that not only is she not afraid of him, she's also surprisingly nice. She tends to his injuries and brings him back to her home not far from the beach, promising to help him find Ariana and Frankie once he's had some time to rest. Once the other two have been located in a rather unorthodox way, Marina is extremely kind to the entire group, making them food and offering to let them stay in her house overnight. While the boys are excited to have a proper shelter for the night, Ariana is extremely wary. She has a hard time trusting people in general, so when someone new enters the stage and is seemingly just nice, polite, and offers to help them without asking anything in return, it definitely causes some friction. Marina is one of the most difficult characters for me to write just because she's probably the furthest personality from my own. She's extroverted and friendly, but in a different form than Frankie. She cares so much about keeping the people around her happy and cared for that it's often to her own detriment. She's one of the only remaining occupants of the island she lives on after both her parents passed away, leaving her alone. And her intense fear of isolation and loneliness drives her to do everything she can to keep the people around her from leaving her. However, she's by no means a doormat. She's extremely protective of the ones she cares about and even shouts down Ariana during a conflict between them later on. something, don't mess with the quiet ones, there's more strength in being kind, etc. While she definitely has her more dramatic moments, Marina becomes this calming pillar of strength for the party as a whole. Someone determined to see the best in people, but who still puts the safety of the people she cares about as her highest priority. While we haven't gotten too much deeper development on her and Rory just yet, I definitely have plans for them in future chapters. We just gotta get some big plot out of the way first. Don't worry about what big plot is. It's fine. It's so fine. Anyway, Rory! Rory is Marina's little tag-along gremlin. You can't have one without the other. They're pair-bonded, they're found family, they're mutually adopted siblings, and they have very contrasting personalities, but in a way that benefits both of them. In a stark contrast to Marina, Rory's a bit of a brat. She loves to screw with people for attention and get under their skin, and her picking Ariana as her first target is how we're introduced to her in the story. She's loud, abrasive, and annoying, so why the heck does Marina put up with her? Well, ain't that just the question? Marina actually says it best in the comic. Rory's not a bad person, she's just bad at first impressions. And I find it very funny how this held true not just in the comic, but also among its readership. So many people hated Rory when she was first introduced, only to come back around to loving her once we got a little deeper and discovered more of her personality and motivations. Rory is what happens when a viciously smart and creative kid doesn't get the attention and acknowledgement she so desperately needs growing up, and turns to acting out instead. Any attention's good attention, right? Rory dealt with being ignored and pushed aside for most of her life, being treated like she didn't really matter until she met Marina, this paragon of love and care who finally actually pays attention to her, who gives her the positive reinforcement she so desperately needed her entire life, someone who actually cares about her and the things she makes. Oh, you know she latches on immediately. Rory and Marina are this inseparable duo. You can't have one without the other, and they provide for each other as well. When Rory came along, Marina finally had someone to keep her company, someone she can care for, who appreciates all the work she puts in. And Rory finally has someone she can be herself around, someone who actually cares about her with no strings attached. And they're both very, very protective of each other, which is shown pretty starkly once the trouble that's been following our main trio winds up at their front door. Rory and Marina are an interesting duo who add a lot of interesting dynamics not just amongst themselves, but also with the other members of the party. For example, Rory ends up getting along really well with both Vector and Frankie, even though their personalities are all so different. And Marina and Ariana are a prime example of opposites attract. Someone who pushes people away because she's afraid of being hurt versus someone who is so scared of being alone that she does her absolute best to stay close to the people around her. Fight! And maybe kiss? Listen, I'm the writer. I'm not going to confirm or deny anything. No spoilers, but I will say there is a very, very healthy and active fan base of people who will go crazy shipping these two. Their ship name is Island Punch. Go have fun with that. Now, that's our main cast accounted for, isn't it? Well, actually, there's one more, so let's talk about Sage. Oh man, Sage, where do I even start with this guy? Well, for starters, Actually, I can't really talk about Sage. He comes into the story really late and is basically a walking spoiler. What can I say? He's a disaster person, a shut-in magic scientist whose desire for knowledge blinds him to his own hubris and leads to some real bad stuff happening. Also, he looks like a knockoff of Jonathan Sims' Magnus Archives, has several people's blood on his hands, and needs to pay his damn child support. It's like a whole thing. Read the comic if you want to hear more about him, I guess. Anyway, moving on. So that's our main cast of protagonists all accounted for, but we still have a few left, so now let's talk about our little secondary group of antagonists. These guys are interesting, as I wouldn't call them villains by any stretch of the word. I'll save that title for some other characters we aren't going to get into in this video. But remember how I said that Vector and co. are on the run from the Royal Guard after his stunt at the Capitol? Well, here they are! The leader of the task force and captain of the Royal Guard himself, it's Zera time. A fun fact, Zera is one of the oldest characters in the comic, but I don't just mean his actual canon age. I mean that he was one of the very first characters I came up with when developing the story. I have concept art of him that predates even Frankie, and he is one of our main guys. Zera's personal story evolved a lot over the course of the comic's development, and even though he hasn't gotten too much screen time just yet, trust me, we'll get there. Like I said, Zera's the captain of the Royal Guard, and it's a position he doesn't seem to really enjoy. He's very aloof and seemingly exhausted all the time. He cares a lot about the soldiers under his command, but doesn't seem to take care of himself very well. The truth is, Zera struggles with insomnia and has had constant recurring nightmares for years now. He has a lot of personal tragedy and baggage weighing him down, and though he tries not to show it, those dark circles speak for themselves, buddy. Zera actually has some sort of connection to our other moody blonde cast member, Ariana, and while their exact connection is a bit of a mystery, Zera definitely has a lot of stakes in what happened to her as a child and holds on to a lot of guilt over it, with that guilt being a driving force behind almost everything he does. And again, don't want to go too heavy into spoilers, but we will be getting answers to this stuff very soon in the comics, so prepare yourselves, gang, it's gonna be a wild ride. But Zera is not the lone wolf type, and he has his own little squadron of allies, so let's talk about them next. So, what I said about Zera not getting a lot of screen time yet also holds true for all the characters in his little group. While they'll definitely be getting some more love in the future, we haven't quite gotten there yet, and I'm reluctant to give anything away for risk of ruining some surprises down the road. So, for the rest of Zera's squad, let's just talk about them all together. In order of rank, first up we have Sonya! Zera's first lieutenant and a highly disciplined and confident range magic user. Sonya's kind of the no-nonsense one of the bunch, the voice of reason, the one who can keep her head on best in a crisis, and also the most dangerous in a fight. She has a very mature, cool, and confident aura about her, which makes it very funny when she's lumped in with Terran, who, in contrast, is the former frat boy meathead type who loves a good brawl. His specialty is close quarters combat, and he enjoys getting to know people by sparring them one-on-one. He's also nosy as hell and fancies himself a bit of a drama detective, being the one who instigates a lot of the group's digging into the mysteries surrounding their captain and his involvement with the plot at large. Also, he has 7 sisters, which says a lot, I feel. The two of them are a sort of dynamic duo, close co-workers and good friends despite their huge differences. In another universe, they'd get a fantasy buddy cop comedy all to themselves, but that's a spin-off for another time. Feel free to use that fanfiction idea in the meantime, though. And lastly, it's Liam ours. Liam isn't a full member of the Guard just yet. He's still in training and is serving as Zera's personal assistant in the meantime. He's a quiet and generally well-behaved little guy who takes his job seriously, but is also very perceptive in his dealings with other people. He's very empathetic and tries his best to do right by others, but is often held back by his age. No matter how mature he acts, he's still a kid, but he's eager to grow up and prove himself. He's a very interesting character with a lot going on under the surface, but again, I'm having to go light on details here because these three haven't quite had their time to shine yet, but we'll get there soon, I promise! Anyway, that's about all we're going to touch on for the characters, but before we go, let's talk a little about the world, shall we? If it isn't obvious by now, I mean, I did say it at the front, so it should be obvious, but Castoff is a fantasy story. But it's pretty light on your typical fantasy fare. It's not your blockbuster high fantasy with dragons and magical creatures and adventurers guilds and all that. It's a bit lighter on fantasy elements by comparison to, say, your Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings style fantasy. While there are elves in the story, they aren't your typical elves. The only difference between elves and humans is that elves have innate magical abilities while humans don't. And how they get magical abilities? Well, magic in this universe is basically radiation. Over time and across many generations, magical energy given off by a specific type of ore in the ground caused that magic to seep into people, giving them magical abilities and creating elves. Humans, meanwhile, can use magic, but only if they take that magic ore and turn it into something called magi gems. Small magic stones turned into jewelry that act as catalysts for magic casting. However, this magic ore is a finite resource, and humanity's supply is rapidly dwindling, causing them to have to take more drastic measures to ensure they have a stable access to it, and it, is quite a source of conflict in universe. We'll leave it at that for now. Also, while the setting does have its medieval fantasy stylings with castles and little villages and whatnot, the level of technology is actually closer to the early 20th century, with an entire country filled with no magic that relies entirely on machinery, just out of the story's peripheral vision. And fun fact, that's actually where Frankie's from. Ooh, the implications. As the story progresses, there's a lot of recurring themes that repeatedly bubble to the surface. The worth of your own life, how a person is worth more than the sum of their parts, the idea that where you come from doesn't have to define you, the way guilt can destroy people, and the value of forgiveness. And that plundering people's homes for natural resources is, bad. Political messaging? In my webcomic? More likely than you think. Anyway, stick all those concepts in a blender, add in a healthy dose of drama, intrigue, flashy magic fight sequences, and big feelings, set it to puree, and blam, you've got yourself a Castoff smoothie, baby. Take a heckin' sip and enjoy it. But that's gonna be where we wrap up for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this little peek into the world of Castoff, and if you'd like more, remember that you can always settle in and read the entire comic for free on the website, link is down below. And once you're all caught up, if you'd like to discuss the comic with other fans, feel free to join our Discord server. The link isn't hard to find, but I won't post it here. Just, if you do want to join and you're able to find the link, please remember that you need to be 15 or older, and please read the rules in detail before joining. Don't make me sick the mods on you. At the time of posting this video, we're a little over halfway through Castoff's planned storyline, and things are gonna keep chugging, baby. Trust me, I've got plans! And if you'd like to help support these wild and crazy plans, as well as get comic pages a month early, behind-the-scenes views and progress snapshots for every page, exclusive monthly merch, and more, check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Castoff. Support over there helps keep the comic alive and thriving, and I super appreciate every single person who helps make it possible. That list of lovely people is scrolling by on the left, but here's a special thank you to my video shout-out tier patrons. Jared, Holly, Mr. Don Matsu, Leaf, Alyssa Herzog, Felix Frenzy, and Neon Valkyrie. Thank you for helping me stay sane while making a silly little comic for a living. But with all that said, that'll be it from me. Fare thee well, friends, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!